In this lesson, we'll look further into the various types of animation layer modes. As we already explained earlier, there are two different types of modes we can have with our layers. Additive, which is pretty much the basic way layers work, where we're able to add on top of pre-existing animation. And then there's override that allows us to, in a sense, block any incoming connections that share the same values of a preceding layer. So being that we should already be comfortable with how additive works, let's go ahead and work more with override in this lesson. So just to show you again, if we were to select this left arm control and we were to create an override layer, one way we can do that is under the layers menu. Notice that we have about 5 options or so that allow us to create these different types of layers. Okay, the first few are for creating regular or additive layers, and then the next are for override, and then we even have layer options that we'll also discuss a little bit later on in this lesson. So let's go ahead and create an override layer from selection. And remember, this is coming from our add selected objects options, so I'll even go ahead and select the translate all the way to rotate attributes, and then go back to that same tool. Alright, so notice with this left arm now connected, it's going to stay behind as the character is moving. The reason why is because its preceding layer, it's coming from another override layer, okay, and it's basically kept the pose therefore, or kept our pose preserved, but it's not allowing us to have any incoming animation at all. Now, there is a way we could actually have at least some or even all of the animation coming from a preceding layer influence this override layer. By default, we have something called pass-through turned on when we create an override layer. So I'll show you this. If we were to go back to layers, go to layer mode, notice directly under override we have pass-through. Pass-through allows the override to work like a gate that opens and closes. With pass-through turned on, we're able to use our weight to control how much the gate will be open. So we can call this our layer opacity then for override layers. If we were to drop our weight to about half the amount and scrub through the animation, now we'll be able to see that only some of the influence is now being added to this arm. Alright, great, but what happens when pass-through is turned off? Well, if we were to go back to layers and turn this off, with that layer that we've created selected, notice what's going to happen. Now, when we bring our weight to 0, what's going to happen is that our control is going to go back to its bind pose, its default value of 0. When we set our weight to 0, it's no longer going to act like an opacity. So when we turn off pass-through, we're totally blocking our connections. So you can get into some fun things with this. Now, I actually have in this scene a couple of examples where I use a mixture of additive layers and also overrides, as you can see. So let's go ahead and see what type of fun things we can come up with here. I'll go ahead and just delete this animation layer at the top. Layers, delete. Alright. Now, so let's say if, as we have our character animated running, what if we wanted to experiment here? What if we wanted to see what would happen if maybe one arm was thrown forward and another was just holding his hat? Well, this would be great for an override layer. So if we were to go to, in this case, the left arm run, drop that down to 0, the right arm run, drop that down to 0, and then the left arm hat, we bring that to 1, and the right arm out, we do the same. Notice what type of effect we're going to get now. If we were to play the animation, and I'll hide the curve. So notice I've just added a little experiment here to see what would work better in this situation. Excellent. And also, if we were to go to, let's say, the chest and head twist, this additive layer, and drop that, now we're going to get less of the twisting, and that might even work out best for the type of run that the character is doing. So this is really getting into how well animation layers can work for us when it comes to our animation workflow. I also have an exaggeration layer here that can crank up so we can have more squash and stretch in the character's upper body. Okay, so again, we're just taking a look at some workflow ideas when it comes to animation layers and how they can truly be a benefit to us when animating. So now that we've discussed those things, I did want to also mention that if we are ever dealing with any enumerated or any Boolean type attributes tied to layers, they're automatically going to be overrides. No matter if we were to create an additive layer with them, or of course using an override layer, they're always going to be an override, and pass-through will have no effect on them. So that's something you want to keep in mind. And also, before we close off this lesson, if we were to go to Layers, go to Create Layer Options, notice we have the ability to turn on pass-through automatically for override layers. And notice it's only for override mode. So these options work when we use the options directly above. Alright, so going back to this list, we're also going to discuss layer accumulation, which is for rotation and scale. That's actually going to be covered in the next lesson. But again, I just wanted to show you these things, and now we understand a little bit more clear how override and additive layers work. So do get familiar with this, because it can in the end really work out to be a fun tool and very efficient tool to use.